We are in football mode every day at 4 o'clock. Football at 4. Use that hashtag on Twitter as we bring you the latest in the NFL. And a lot going on, a lot of stuff happening out there in terms of some Cowboys, some Giants, some Redskins, a little NFC East stuff. John, the Cowboys are a team that are always kind of in the lexicon around here because you got those not transplants, just bandwagon fans, I guess you could say. And the NFC East is probably the highest profile division in football. But this is a team that this offseason really didn't make a whole heck of a lot of noise, but they're starting to chirp a little bit. It's like, hey, we didn't do a heck of a lot, so we got to start talking. Amari Cooper saying that he wants to stay there. He wants to have 2,000 yards this year. You know, that was a deal last year that got criticized a lot. But do we think that Amari Cooper, that in this year in Dallas, could be that big-time receiver that they've been missing?
Well, he was that last year. I think you have to give him credit for that trade, and they got criticized a lot. I was in that group also. Not scaling back, I thought the trade at the time didn't make a lot of sense, but you have to give him credit. It worked out wonderfully. He was a big difference maker. He was a true wide receiver one for them when he came over from Oakland. Had a tremendous impact on that team and that offense as a whole. I think when you look at Cooper in his time in Oakland, no one questioned his talent. It was about the consistency and the lack of consistency from week to week, year to year. So I think that's the biggest question mark. There's no doubt he has a lot of talent, but he's got to prove that he's consistently a top-tier guy. For a short sample size, hey, he was great for the Dallas Cowboys. There was no way they were going to get a player that contributed at his level where they were going to pick in the draft. So from that standpoint, you have to give him a lot of credit short term. We'll see how it works out long term.
Yeah, he had 725 yards in 9 games with Dallas. That comes out to 1,288 yards, which means, you're a far cry away from 2,000 yards. However, my question really is, did the Dallas Cowboys get away from Ezekiel Elliott? That's where I don't see it. I couldn't see Amari. I mean, yes, he will help them out, but to get 2,000 yards would be preposterous when you have Elliott on your team.
Yeah, that's part of it as well. That offense is built on Zeke Elliott, and it should be. He's their best player. He's arguably the best runner, certainly, in the NFL. You can talk about guys who are more well-rounded in the backfield and make arguments there. But as far as being a bell cow that can handle a lot of carries, there's nobody better than Ezekiel Elliott. The question you always have to ask is the value of that position in the modern NFL, the wear and tear, the short career span when somebody touches it as much as he touches it. And that's something the Cowboys have to weigh and be concerned about as they get into the second contract with him. But you have to give, again, credit where credit is due. He's a tremendous player. He's a tremendous running back. They're a good football team when they build their offense on him. When he was suspended, when he wasn't there, they weren't a good offense, and that tells you a lot. And I think there's people in Dallas who think Dak Prescott should make more money than Carson Wentz. No, he's not that type of quarterback. And when you talk about Amari Cooper getting 2,000 yards, you got to have a high-volume passer to do that, even if they didn't have Ezekiel Elliott, because Dak Prescott isn't that type of quarterback. So this offense is built and everything runs through Zeke Elliott, and it will continue to be that way.
Yeah, and you just mentioned Dak Prescott, who obviously says expectations are high. They were, very good his first year, and he jumped on the map. They were pretty good last year too, and you wonder, is Dak Prescott a guy that is he that franchise quarterback? Is he that middle of the road guy? I mean, they've been pretty good with him there.
Yeah, he's been good. I don't think
13-3, 9-7, 10-6.
And if you can argue the 1 year where Zeke was suspended for 6 games, it would have been better. Hey, they have a lot of talent. I mean, it's not just about the quarterback. They have had, through his tenure, as I said, perhaps the best runner in the game, so that helps. They've had a tremendous offensive line, especially when it comes to run blocking. Now they've improved at the wide receiver position, as we mentioned. So there's a lot of talent, but you got to be wary. And this is what Joe Banner always says about the Eagles, and what the Eagles have had tremendous success doing is striking early, taking advantage, setting the market. That's what they were able to do with Carson Wentz. It might sound like a lot of money, but when you fast forward in 3 years, it's not going to be a lot of money. And the Eagles were able to get a team-friendly contract by acting swiftly. Now that contract is out there, and the quarterbacks like Dak Prescott and his agent, they're looking at that number and using it as a template. So the Cowboys are going to have to overpay, most likely. And that's not necessarily a good thing.
And they've, I mean, to me anyway, it sounds like they've made it pretty clear that they think he deserves that money.
Well, I mean, that's always personal decision-making. You know, if you go back to 2017, and that's not that far off, that's not that far in the rearview mirror, Carson Wentz was going to be the MVP of this league. You could argue he was the best player in football, as the best quarterback in football, certainly the most impactful before he tore his knee. So you know what his ceiling is as a player. Have you seen that from Dak Prescott? I don't think you have.
I don't know what we've seen. Like, what have we seen from Dak Prescott? It's almost
I think you've
impressive.
seen a solid quarterback. I think.
Right.
I don't want to overstate. He's certainly been far above average. I don't want to downgrade what he's done. He's been a solid NFL quarterback, but I haven't seen the kind of ceiling that we've seen with Carson Wentz.
It's almost impressive that they've been. This is just my opinion from afar. I mean, I'm not there every day in Dallas, but they've done a heck of a job, like, masking his weaknesses, like, and using Zeke and using their style of play offensively to fit to his strengths, right?
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, the best friend, even in today's NFL, where nobody pays attention, nobody cares, nobody values the running back. When you have a good one, that's still the best friend to the quarterback. And if you're in 2nd and 3 versus 2nd and 9 all the time, you're going to be a heck of a lot more successful. So I don't think you can underestimate how much impact Ezekiel Elliott has on that team, that offense, and that quarterback.
We say it all the time, and I think you just said this to us last week, John, that, you know, make Dak Prescott beat you. Make him throw the ball down the field and make him beat you. You don't say that if you're talking about an elite, even top 10, dare I say, 15 quarterback in the NFL, right?
No,
like, how big of a year is this for him?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly it. When defensive coordinators play the Dallas Cowboys, they want Dak Prescott to beat them. They want to stop Ezekiel Elliott. And if you play the Philadelphia Eagles, you don't want the football in the hands of Carson Wentz. You want to force them away from the things that he does well. That's any great quarterback. You want to do things to get them off their game. But every team in this league, you start somewhere when you game plan. And with the Cowboys, it's Elliott. It's not Dak Prescott. And anybody who thinks otherwise is kind of silly.
So at what point do we say Dak isn't who we thought he could be? I mean, at least for the people that are in his corner.
Well, I think he's been more than we thought he would be. As coming into this league, he has overachieved. This is not the 2nd overall pick in the draft. This is a mid-round draft pick. He has exceeded expectations by every measure, even with a good running back, a good receiver, a good offensive line. He's done tremendous for what was expected of him coming out of the draft. I think where the disconnect is Now people are saying this is a $32 million quarterback. This should be the next guy. No, he's not that guy. He's an above-average starter in the NFL, and you need those other pieces to have success. The good news for the Cowboys is, on paper at least, offensively, they have those other pieces. But you have to be smart enough to realize that's helping the quarterback, and you don't need to go where they seem prepared to go on the contract front.
And they're going to have a new offensive coordinator, so he's going to be learning a new offense.
Well, yeah, that's never good. Again, with the Cowboys, it's strange because the head coach is really the offensive coordinator, but he was a number of years ago, Jerry Jones took the play calling away from him. He was forced to give it to Scott Linehan, and Scott would call the plays, and now Kellen Moore's the offensive coordinator, and we'll see if Jason Garrett calls the plays. Jerry Jones wants him to be a CEO coach, but it's his offense. So it's not going to be a new offense. It's just going to be a new voice calling the plays. So I think that's a little bit overrated. But the Cowboys and their coaching staff, it's very weird. It's a very weird setup. The defensive coordinator, Rod Marinelli, isn't really the defensive coordinator. Chris Richard called the plays last year. It's just a bizarre situation.
John McMullen, Football at 4, at JF McMullen. Let's look down at the Giants real fast. We talk about Ezekiel Elliott, what he means to that offense. Do you think Barkley is able to be this, difference-making running back without Beckham there and with the quarterback situation?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got tremendous talent, and he's one of those guys you put in the conversation, at least project him to be one of the more well-rounded running backs. He can not only run the football, but he also has tremendous receiving ability, explosion. The one question, and this is, I just brought it up with Elliott, but Elliott, he can handle the workload. He can handle a ton of touches. I don't know if I believe that with Saquon Barkley.
Right.
So I think you have to temper it a little bit more. I don't know if he can be that type of workhorse. So I think that's the biggest issue. But from a talent standpoint, similar situation. The NFC East, sort of outside Philadelphia, is almost turned upside down to an old school environment where every single offense is based on the running back first. Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Adrian Peterson. It's weird.
Yeah, you mentioned Adrian Peterson and, the whole situation down there. They got him last year, and he had this great start to the year, and then he kind of faded off. But you're going with a rookie quarterback there, and that situation down there just seems like we talk about the Giants having issues with the quarterback, the Washington situation with the quarterback, and then on top of the fact you got an aging Adrian Peterson. Like, at least the Giants have Barkley, but what's going on in Washington with their quarterback situations for Haskins? I feel bad for that poor kid that there's just not a lot of weapons around him.
No, well, it's a tough situation because you don't know who's going to play quarterback. It could be Dwayne Haskins. It could be Case Keenum. It could be even Colt McCoy. So that's where you're going into training camp. So it is going to have to be run heavy. Remember, if you're looking at the receivers now, Josh Doxson, he's a former first-round pick, but hasn't been able to stay healthy, hasn't proven from a production standpoint. That's probably the best receiver they have, so that's not necessarily good. They do still have the great tight end situation, but Jordan Reed always seems to be hurt. So you have to play that into it. And you mentioned the backfield. Yeah, Adrian is aging, played very well last season, still a really good runner, not good at anything else. Even in his prime, he wasn't a good pass catcher, wasn't good in pass protection. So they've kind of loaded up. It's not only Peterson. Remember, they still have Darius Geis, who got hurt last year. They have Chris Thompson, who's a good third down back that the Eagles have seen many times. They even drafted Bryce Love, the former Stanford kid that was great there. So they got a lot of bodies in the backfield. It's going to have to be run first. Every team in the NFL, except the Eagles, isn't built for modern football.
And by the way, the Redskins did get a win today. The Supreme Court, this whole effort to protect their name, the court ruled that the federal government may not prohibit trademarks on immoral or scandalous materials. So it looks like the Redskins are going to get to keep that name for at least a little while longer, or if not for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's no surprise because the lower court had already ruled that, and it wasn't. It's actually more than the Redskins. It had to do with a rock band called the Slam,
right?
And that was always going to be a tough road to hoe for the government, and that's more of a sort of a moral objection to Daniel Snyder. But the government is not going to be able to change that. People are going to have to convince Daniel Snyder. He's leaned on tradition. You can argue either way. There's no question that was an offensive term when it originated. But, as a guy who's getting older, I can honestly say, and people can – the whole generation of people that I grew up have never used the Redskins in a disparaging way. They've only used it to describe the football team in Washington. So I do think there's an overreaction in some quarters, but if you're a Native American, you're upset by it, you have every right to be.
Yeah, that was news today. And, of course, football at 4. We just said July 21st, Atlanta is in training camp, and that will kick it all off July 24th for the Philadelphia Eagles. We've got football for you at Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Follow John McMullen on Twitter at JFMcMullen. All right, pal. We'll talk to you soon.
Enjoy the beach bar.